Hello, IT enthusiasts. Welcome to another episode of My Computer Careers Get Into IT Live, where we do just that, get into all things IT. As always, thank you so much for joining us on your Friday and your Fridays at noon. Know you're busy, so we appreciate a few minutes to talk about some pretty important topics. And no more important of a topic than the one we're talking about today, and that is the job search. Why am I not finding a job? Why am I not finding a career? We hope to help you kind of uncover some of that and provide some tips during this conversation. Just as an aside, by the way, if you see me shivering, it's freezing in the house, so you'll understand that. There may be a sneeze or two as well. Welcome to fall and welcome to me being a giant baby. So let's go ahead and get past that. Want to make sure that we introduce our guest properly. As you'll see Charlie here on the screen. Charlie is a senior technical recruiter with VanderHouwen, and he's also host of the Getting Hired in Tech with Charlie Baumann podcast. So we're going to talk more about you, Charlie, but first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us.
Really happy to be here, Aaron. Thanks for welcoming me. I'm hoping I can help message and help your community any way I can.
I promise it will. And by the way, Charlie's joining us from the Northwest. He's out in Oregon. So early call for him today, but he's already been up and working. So he's raring to go.
Yeah. And I have my Pacific Northwest flannel, so I got to be on brand. So.
Heck yeah. Patagonia? I can't tell.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Okay. All right. Okay, when we have these conversations around the job and around the career search, I was telling Charlie earlier, they're always the ones that get the most, they're always the conversations that get the strongest reaction. Because I realize, and we all realize that in 2024, the career search can be difficult. It can be difficult to navigate. And it was interesting. I went to an event earlier this week, and I was coming back from the airport in an Uber, and the Uber driver was kind of giving me his background, and he was a chatty Uber driver, so you never know what you're going to get. And he was telling me that he had a long career in finance. He lived overseas. He was in banking, and then he moved to the States, and he had a career again, in finance and was working away. And a few months ago, he got laid off. And, he's trying to figure out kind of what he wants to do. So he went and got the Uber to kind of make ends meet. He's doing that, as we all do. But he was talking about some of the frustration with his job search. He's got all kinds of years of experience. He's applied to hundreds, 150, I think he said, jobs. He spent time interviewing. He spent time on his resume, on his profile, but he can't seem to break through. And I heard his frustration, and it's been several months. And I know that's not unlike a lot of folks. So today's job market is obviously no joke, and it requires some real focus, some real persistence to go find that meaningful career. So to go a little further into Charlie's background, Charlie Baumann spent nearly 15 years in progressive roles in the recruiting industry and is currently a senior technical recruiter at VanderHouwen, where he helps folks like you get into tech. So if you're starting or if you're immersed in the job search, Charlie's going to help us out today. Again, Charlie, why don't we have a little bit of fun and jump into things?
Absolutely. And I'm going to give you kind of a quick background. Yeah, so I've done, like you said, probably close to 15 years of total recruitment in various forms, but the last, I guess, nearly 12 years doing tech and pretty closely tech adjacent, hiring as a third-party agency for VanderHouwen. We're a Portland-based, but we're now national in terms of our reach and our scope. And women-owned tech staffing company's been our core identity for almost 40 years. So just happy to, I guess, one of the goals I'd have is that I would come across as my vantage point is a third party. So we hire for literally hundreds of companies and have for many years. And so I'm going to just try to pay forward my observations. I'm not don't want to sound like any sort of expert. I'm not a hiring manager myself, but we get the feedback from hiring managers. So I think that's why I could maybe help the audience.
I think there's going to be a lot of value, Charlie. Obviously, this isn't your first day. You've been doing this for a long time. And as an added bonus, you understand the broadcast space, which makes my life a lot easier. Sure. So this is going to be a fun one. So folks, speaking of that, by the way, Let me go to comments. Comments, ask questions. You got an expert here. You got an expert for the next 25 minutes. It's going to provide some advice, and we're going to burn through a few questions. But in a perfect world, we won't get to any of these questions. You're going to ask so many, we're going to answer yours. So please feel free to add questions, and Charlie will answer those for you. Okay. A lot of the times I save this kind of big question until the end of the conversation. But, with the Uber story and with our introduction, I thought that I'd lead with this. And so many folks kind of fall into this category, like our friend, the Uber driver. As someone who lives in this industry and helps so many folks find careers, Charlie, what advice do you have for that person that's frustrated by the job search, frustrated by not hearing from an employer after 6 months and 150 resumes submitted, who's just ready to give up on the search? What do you have?
Yeah, Aaron. And so this actually hits home for me. I've been on the other side of the desk in another economic or job market downturn, if you will. It was a different part of my career. As you mentioned, people can do career pivots, and it's no longer the days of you get a specific tactical career field education and you go do that for 40 to 50 years and then you just retire. So my background was that I had majored in accounting and was in that accounting finance realm, but was laid off by a big national kind of CPA firm at the time. And I've sat on the other side of the desk and can know when you're an applicant, you're looking for work, you're grateful for any opportunity. And when you're not getting the responses, it becomes almost like some sort of imposter syndrome, or, hey, am I good enough for this? Should I just hang it up? Should I go into something else, even though that's not really what I want to do? Was lucky enough to get approached by a recruiter that really had my back and showed that partnership, and they gave a crap. And so I pivoted, and I since I had experienced the pain and frustration of job seeking myself, because I had, about 2 years experience out of college, right? Didn't have the CPA license that a lot of employers for competitive finance or accounting jobs had that I was applying to. They said, hey, we are having a hard time getting you a job at some of these enterprise clients that have their own systems and sometimes gatekeeping situations. They said, what about being one of us? And you can be one of the good guys now, and you're not the auditor anymore. And now you can help people get jobs. So and then I was just like, hey, I was just doing retail to pay the bills, which there's no shame in doing that. This is 2010. And since I've loved recruiting in various formats, but tech specifically has been my passion. So I guess to give that backstory, it also leads into my suggestion about finding good, I say ideally local recruiters that know your footprint, that, you hear these number of applications. In fact, I was just exchanging some messages on LinkedIn because I had advised targeting resumes, right, for each job. But, how could you do that for 30 to 50 a week in order to get the traction? And the idea here, Aaron, is that if you're finding some recruiters, and not just one, but a few that you trust, that are transparent, there are good ones like these third-party agents, right, that are doing a lot of legwork for you. And then maybe you only have to put a few out per week, and that allows customization. You can't customize, dozens of resumes. It's ridiculous. But so recruiters, yes, some come in peace and some are good and trustworthy and have a track record of actually hiring for these companies, which then you're kind of getting through some of that gatekeeping applicant tracking system process. But in-person networking, okay, where I am, it's coming back full force. I'm in Portland. There's a lot of tech groups. Some are only quarterly, some are monthly. There's this meetup calendar that shows the whole, list of events where I'm at, and I know it's in most major areas. Some are maybe only quarterly, and then there's like 100 people. There's hiring managers. I mean, I don't know a more surefire way to get a human being's eyeballs on your resume than handing it to them. And maybe that sounds old school or out of this in-person networking that had gone away, or maybe it was done very irregularly or virtually. The value of seeing in person is huge, even if you don't consider yourself, by the way, I'm every single personality test introvert, right? But getting yourself out there is good for people. There's an IT technician that we've hired before, and I've encouraged him, getting yourself out there. He's like, I don't really want to do that, Charlie. Well, this is a year unlike any of the years that I've done tech hiring, where you have to do everything you can that's in your control. Many things are out of your control, but
Right.
to do that, I guess those are some of my initial thoughts. I had some other notes about, I'm trying to keep things concise because I know we got a lot of questions to go through, but Slack channels and communities from companies that have had layoffs, sharing leads. Because if I send someone a job as a recruiter, really, actually, unfortunately, might have missed the mark, but I know someone that's excellent. Can I share it with them? Or I'm going to be circulating this amongst my community. Love those ideas. So,
and we're going to tackle some of those on down the line because we are going to get to that, some other resources that folks can use. So that's such sound advice, Charlie. I'm so glad to hear you bring up networking. We're going to talk about it a little bit more, but we spoke to a CEO of an MSP, a provider of an MSP a few weeks ago. And he was saying, you know what, it's great to network, but you need to step out from behind the keyboard and actually go get a cup of coffee with somebody. Step out of your comfort zone a little bit, go network in person, because that can be what separates the person I hire from the person I don't.
Yeah. So. And I think that finding a, even inside the company, talent acquisition or HR manager, those are going to be most their titles. Hey, ping them on LinkedIn. If you write a heartfelt, well-tailored, quick, hey, no pressure, know you're getting lots of inundated applications. Would you be open to can I buy you a cup of coffee? If somebody goes to that length as I'm receiving that, I'm going my extra mile because they're going there. They're being vulnerable. They're putting themselves out there.
I agree completely. And not to get too much into it, but just like you, I've been on the other side as well. I know how frustrating it can be. It starts to make you feel like the skills you have aren't relevant. All the great work you've done isn't relevant. And you also start to really just question the process. So I can understand completely where a lot of folks are. So we're coming from the same spot. All right. So obviously you have to stand out a little bit. Charlie, you're a recruiter. You see hundreds and hundreds of applications or resumes. What catches your eye just in general, if you don't mind, about a candidate for a tech role?
Yeah, Aaron. So you know how they have that phrase where you kind of have the 30-second rule of kind of scanning the resume, which I know that's kind of another topic that we'll get to. No, I mean, right. resume is going to contribute to it. And I'm going to be honest, we're going to do some sort of keyword searching. So even the things that might sound like really mundane. I had a discussion a while back. It was like some job for like a database development role, and they had mentioned SQL development, but they hadn't spelled out the terms like stored procedures. And it just seems, for someone in tech, it seems so mind-numbingly, maybe potentially obvious, but like spelling it out, if it's kind of in the HR jargon, which I realize sometimes comes across as business jargon in job descriptions that are HR formulated. Sometimes we have to go the extra mile and like spell it out, or if it's an acronym, like there was a MarTech job and it was like Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and she had the SFMC but didn't spell out the words, and you never know what. So I think going to job descriptions and how do they word it? It's like, oh, I do have that, but I didn't think of listing that. So resume.
Charlie, not to interrupt you, but go a little further. Why do folks need to do that?
Well, because there's these applicant tracking systems. So when we talk about, there's kind of a gatekeeping system going on this year because of the number of applicants, either job loss or, layoff or whatever the circumstance. Maybe they had to leave a job because they're required to go return to office or something like that. So there's a lot more fierce competition than any job market in tech that I've had in the 10-year plus history.
And the ATS is going to filter based on those keywords, is what you're saying.
Yeah, totally. And because they're going to have to remove bias. And how do they get through the list of applicants? We don't have to like it, Aaron. I didn't create the system, but that's just what we're operating with. Yeah.
Agreed. Okay. Got it.
And then can I say one more thing about what catches my eye?
Say as much as you want, Charlie. Yeah, please.
Yeah, of course. So then, like the LinkedIn profile, I mean, we're going to be vetting people that way. Not vetting, but just we use it. It's not the formal document that the resume is, but just have a profile picture, make yourself searchable if you are open to work, and then what sort of parameters you have. It's just going to make make it easier for us to help you. As Jerry Maguire would say, help us help you, right? So then, hey, I'm even open to contract-based jobs. If you put it all right there, oh, I assume that was apparent, I'm not working. Well, we don't always know what to send you, and the more approachable and descriptive you can be in your little LinkedIn summary, making sure that the last job is current. If you ended and I know that there's an end date, then I know you're immediately available. And some clients that we hire for, they need somebody that could start like next week almost for some certain jobs. So making yourself, having a profile picture, it welcomes us. It makes us know what to send you. Put your little, I'm interested in full stack developer jobs, or I'm interested in tier 3 desktop support job, whatever it is, that clear call to action. I do hear people, and even this week, she said, "Oh, I don't want to." LinkedIn just feels like another social media channel in the feed, and I just get inundated and bogged down. Well, it is being used by almost everybody at various levels in hiring, so you have to take it seriously. That I think I'll stop there for now.
I love that piece of advice, Charlie. Use it. It's something I wouldn't even have thought of. Taking your profile and making sure that everything is just right there, so that I'm Mr. Charlie Baumann and I want to see what this candidate's preferences are. They're right in my face as soon as I click in. It's such a good piece of advice.
Because you can say, "Hey, I'm open to on-site. I'm open to hybrid. I'm open to contract. I'm open to direct hire. Just in these locations." Or some people say, "I'm open to relocation," and we have companies that are willing to pay to relocate top tech talent. So
got it. Okay. All right. So we've spent literally whole episodes on the resume. It's a big question. It's tough to kind of boil down to, well, hey, what do you like to see? But hey, what do you like to see in a resume?
Yeah, and I will do one shameless self plug that I do have a 20-minute episode dedicated to tech resume specifics, and not just resume 101 that you could Google. Like I have some targeted. I have an episode. It's on Spotify. Okay, all that. But I will tell for this audience, I'm going to try to keep this to a minute and a half, because we got some other stuff to get to. But like skills summaries should be like half a page, like not novels. Like you got to get to the point. They want to start seeing, hiring managers care so much, Aaron, about like what they did where, and then in the work, embedded in the work experience. So 5 to 7 bullet points for recent jobs seems to be the golden number, because it's detailed enough, but it's not a novel.
Interesting.
And then there's not like scroll fatigue. Like that's, you mentioned that, yes, I do receive like hundreds of applications every week, but and not just the tool you use, but like listing those technologies, the 3 to 5, whatever the core technologies at each job, but what you did with it, the purpose of the project, major highlight, major like wins or accomplishments, milestones that help you stand out. Don't diminish any wins you've had. Don't assume that everybody has that on their resumes. Even some people that maybe, instead of like junior tech, I like to use the term label themselves as like early career technologists or emerging technologists. I love the connotation of that versus entry level or junior, but there might be some unofficial leadership that people have gained from internships or programs that they had maybe hadn't thought about, Aaron, of listing. Like I actually mentored someone, or was become a subject matter expert, or maybe I helped train or onboard a particular tool. Like those will help you stand out.
Folks, so if nothing else, once we end this conversation, go back and watch that minute again, because that was a perfectly concise description and advice on what to do with your resume. So I really appreciate that. And we have, Patricia has shared Charlie's podcast in the chat, so you can go check that out and go find the episode that he's talking about as well. We see David over on Facebook. He's just starting out himself. David, you'll get there. Just, keep plugging along. So speaking of that, just starting out, we have, many folks, Charlie, you and I talked about this before we came on, that are working to kind of break into IT, or, or maybe in their early careers that are in our audience. So I say that to say, is experience critical or necessary? And if so, how can people who are just finishing cert training, college, self-study, whatever the case may be, how can they show experience to a potential employer if they may not have exactly what an employer is looking for?
Aaron, we're live and we're on camera, and there's a wide audience. This is going to be, when we talked about the questions that we might be discussing, this is going to be the one where I'm going to have observations and advice, but I don't have as much direct experience hiring people that are looking to break into IT. I usually tell people candidly, third-party staffing agencies often hire people that have maybe 1, 2, 3 at least years that are already in the. So I tell people I'm probably your best bet to get your second or third job in tech. However, I will say that beyond the things, the core principles of networking, using recruiters, leveraging them, or some sort of personal connection. You might know someone at the company. Those are the core principles, and still what I would say, regardless of experience level, frankly.
Yeah.
But even willingness, strategy to take on part-time or temp job, foot in the door, even like something that might not be exactly at the level of your ultimate goal. Like there's sometimes people where they will like have some sort of IT technician certification, or they've gone through a program and they take that job that's maybe tier 1 or tier 2. They want to become a software developer. I've seen that a lot of times at a tech company, people can first become promoted to like application support engineer, and then you start doing some light coding and scripting along the way, and then boom, and then you'd be surprised. You might be thankful that you took that job to get the foot in the door, and they might be able to help send you to some schooling, and many companies will pay for that.
So I really appreciate the honesty there, Charlie. And what you just said actually leads to a question we had down the road. So why don't I hit on that right now? Kind of back to this experience discussion. Job searchers are sometimes reluctant to jump into that role that you're talking about. Maybe help desk or entry level, or maybe even a career that they feel like, or a career level that may be a little below where they should be. What are your thoughts on that mindset? And should people consider those roles, especially in tech?
Aaron, I really think they should, because then it's also something to tell employers, future employers about. We all have to start somewhere, right? I know that sounds like generic advice, but I recommend to people in this competitive job market, which 24 and 24 definitely has been, to think of any experience as good experience. And then people that are employed interview more freely with less pressure. And so I don't want to use the cliche, like you're kind of playing with house money, but when you're in a job, you're eyed by a lot of employers as somebody that's current and staying current. And then you can build to it, and you can describe what your long-term career goals, and tell the hiring manager once you get to that stage, hey, this is what I've done and I'm proud of it. It's set a great tech foundation, but this is my career goals long-term.
And to go, I guess, just a little bit further from some of the conversations we've had and from hearing from you, if your goal is to, be a long time employee in that company, or, not take a contract job, it seems like the reality is take the job. And if you excel, as in any role, you're going to advance if you're in the right company.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You absolutely will. You're almost betting on yourself.
Got it. All right. So we had questions about hard skills. I don't know if you want to tackle that. We have a question. I don't know that that's as important. We can come back to that if you want to, Charlie, of course. But soft skills, I know, is kind of the besides networking, soft skills is something that comes up a lot in these conversations. Are soft skills important? If so, which soft skills should our audience be concentrating on?
Well, I don't know about specific soft skills, but you would be surprised in tech. I think sometimes there's rightfully so expectation or connotation that it's all about the hard skills, and that's all that matters. And to a degree, the hard skills probably get people in the door, but what help people advance is soft skills. What help people get differentiated over their career is soft skills. Not in the connotation that you need to climb the ladder and just get promotions every 2 years, but people that are recognized even for parallel positions, favored for parallel positions, whether that's internally or taking a new job, will have some of those traits, like willingness to step up, willingness to train, willingness to just hear out, maybe more junior tech people on the team. Yeah. That does get noticed. That can get articulated. Even if it's not in title. I wasn't a lead engineer. I wasn't a lead technician, but here's what I did. That's more important to be able to articulate that than to be able to list a fancy job title.
That's, by the way, everyone, that's the second time that Charlie's mentioned willingness. You got to be open to these things. You have to be willing to adapt and willing to work with other folks. I think that's just sage advice. So I really appreciate that. All right. We live in a connected world is kind of where we're going next. But you did talk, I want to talk about the digital footprint. We harp on it a lot here. We harp on the need to have a digital footprint that is impressive. Is there anything beyond LinkedIn, Charlie, that you're looking at as a recruiter?
Well, for software engineers, I mean, the GitHub or the Stack Overflow or some sort of online portfolio. We also hire a lot of data people, Aaron. So like data visualization or analytics or just something in that field. People that have work example, data governance has come up recently, quite a bit. So people that have some sort of, it doesn't have to be like that formal, link to a website, but it could be like, hey, I got this project that I can share. Which I fully realize the digital footprint can be tricky. Many times large enterprises, Aaron, have NDAs or confidentiality agreements. So, but there are projects along the way in someone's career that someone can build up, and those definitely differentiate people. We've got a quasi-government client here in Oregon, and those that have something that can be shown tangibly, or oftentimes like product designers or UX designers, if you have something like that really showcases, put it right in front of them, this is what I'm capable of.
Got it. What about, not to veer off a little bit, but what about that candidate that maybe you go and search their personal profiles on social and you're seeing misspelling, or you're seeing maybe posts that they wouldn't want their mom to see? Are you factoring that in when you're looking at a candidate?
Well, I personally don't have the time maybe per se, because I work in a fast-paced agency environment, but right. I have through the years heard stories. We did a quick Google search, this was said, it was really bad, right? And anyway, yeah, you just want to be careful. What's out there can be searched now more than ever.
Got it. All right, makes good sense. I appreciate it. We talked about networking, obviously the buzzword. Anything that we haven't covered with networking that you think is important to share?
No. The mentality, I'll just drive it home one more time. The mentality and willingness to get yourself out there. It breaks the comfort zone. I realize, many people in various technology roles are not public or client facing or sales oriented, nor should they be. But this is just an important step that I've found that people that are willing to do it and that get themselves out there, they're thankful later that they did it.
Success comes from discomfort. I think that's really good. All right. Back to the IT career, IT especially, and I don't know if this is perfect for you, Charlie, but I know that since you do live in this world, you're going to have some insight. Upskilling, continuing education, it's so important in a lot of industries, but in IT, it seems paramount. Do you agree? Is it important?
Yes, it is important. I have had examples of like this lead software developer, but it was basically like, he had been a manager for a couple of years, but what was he doing to stay current? He had done all these self-trainings and tutorials, and he was working towards a certification. The hiring manager said, hey, we like him the best in terms of a company and team fit, but we're worried that maybe because he had done, like basically, Aaron, he had done 20 years of coding, but it didn't happen to be in the most recent 2 years. But he had done a lot of stuff in the last few months after being unfortunately part of a layoff. We got on a conference call with the hiring manager, with the candidate. Hey, are you willing to dive right back into the code? What have you done to stay current? And it was very circumstantial, and he didn't necessarily want to be that manager. The company had just appointed him that title. And he was able to articulate, I'm still current. This is what I've been doing. So that's one example that illustrates, I think, the core topic.
And I guess to your point as well, and I think you touched on it earlier, there are a lot of times the company you're working for, if they value their employees, they will invest in that reskilling opportunity as well. Because
I always stress the concept of just lifetime career tech learner. Like there's always new frameworks, languages, technologies coming out.
Got to be curious in tech, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. You touched on resources a little earlier. Let's jump back into that. Are there any resources, Charlie, you'd recommend that folks should use during their career search? Obviously, we know about LinkedIn, we know about Glassdoor, but what else can folks utilize?
There's a pretty cool app that might not be as vital to the mechanism of applying for jobs, but just arming yourself with industry knowledge. It's called Blind. It's free.
Oh,
And that's like, information from real people out there. And so I guess that's the biggest one that come to mind, other than just like local meetup sites, just regularly subscribing. We've got one here in Portland that's called the Silicon Forest, and you can just search for local tech jobs. Like every community is going to have things like that you want to kind of bookmark and check maybe weekly.
got it. And for those folks, let's say I'm really interested in working at Microsoft, whatever the case may be. That's where I want to work. Do you think it makes sense for candidates to go learn, have a Google search come to your inbox every day about Microsoft or a specific, whatever roles you're interested in Microsoft or areas you're interested in Microsoft, making sure you're staying current on news so that you can speak to that? Does that kind of stuff make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. And one thing that I do, Aaron, is we want to stay current on companies hiring. Well, so will applicants, but just following their pages on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And you're going to get that in your feed and be like, oh, wow, I've been on the radar, but that reminds me, I did have that informal discussion with one of their recruiters. I hope they're keeping me top of mind. Maybe I'll ping him or her because some alert happened, and just staying current, staying persistent, right? I think that's one of the keys of this job market.
Got it. Love it. Thank you. All right. So, let's end it here. We're hearing all kinds of news around the tech industry. Big tech is laying off thousands of people. We see it as recently as last week. That is the reality. But, some people kind of question the industry because we've been a bit schizophrenic over the last several months, but overall still seem to be performing well against other sectors in terms of hiring. I say all that to ask you directly, do you think, are there viable opportunities to find meaningful careers in IT right now?
I mean, I'm pretty biased, right? Because it's the field that I support and that I advocate for. But Aaron, really, it is coming back in the fall. I have personally felt for months. I mean, we're talking about this unpredictable roller coaster of an overall year. It's been, no doubt, no denying that. I've even lost some confidence at certain points, but then it's coming back. It's really coming back. In some ways, it reminds me of the end of 2022. Out of 2020, right? And so this year's maybe had a few more ups and downs as opposed to kind of a exponential recovery like we had in 2020. But I would encourage people, stick with it. There are industry allies that are wanting people to not only break into tech, but to stay into tech and help them feel supported and encouraged. And that's what I'm here for.
And go find a pro like Charlie, or go find an organization like VanderHouwen to help you along the way as well. So speaking,
we are here to help. We're here to help, ultimately.
Certainly. Where can folks find more, Charlie?
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You'll see on my header, it says, yes, I hire in Portland, but also now nationally, we're in 45 states. You can apply to VanderHouwen.com. Connecting with me on LinkedIn is probably the easiest and first. And then from there, you could also check out some of my podcast episodes.
What do you say we have you back on at some point and we can talk about what the best way to work with a recruiter?
I'd love to share lots of insight on that. And I've experienced things directly being recruited and recruiting others. So would love it. I
bet we could unpack 30 minutes. Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. All right. That sounds great. I'd love to do it. This has been eye-opening and hugely helpful for me, Charlie, and I'm sure for a lot of folks. Make sure that you go check out his podcast. Make sure you go check out the company. Follow him on LinkedIn, all the things. Do all the things. It will help you in the search. So, as always, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. I've appreciated the chat with Charlie, but always appreciate you being here with us as well. As you know, we'll be here next weekend or next Friday, same time, same place. And we'll be announcing a few more details about that early next week. But thanks, everyone, for your time. And Charlie, thanks so much for your insight and sharing with us today.
Happy to be here. Loved it. Love to do it again.
Fantastic. We'll have you back on. All right, folks, that'll do it. Charlie, if you don't mind hanging around. And everybody else, we'll see you here next week. Thank you.